Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining us one more time as we continue staying at home and staying safe. As we promised, as Mtoto will continue giving you information, resources that you can be able to use in your home with your children to just make life much better. And it's Tuesday, it's another Tuesday. We have Dr. Barnice Nderitu, who is a psychologist.
Just Bernice, I'm not yet a doctor.
Barnice Nderitu, who is a psychologist, and she's going to get into, last week we left it as scheduling, and I told you the way myself, I consider myself a child person, but it's been a struggle, and I know I'm not the only one. It's been a struggle getting my children to go into a schedule. So today we are going to go into a schedule. We are going to go into how do we develop a schedule? How can we make it more, how can we stick to it? And as we do that, how to keep our mental state better. So thank you so much. Barnice, yes. From last week, can you go on?
Okay, yeah, so hi everybody. Thank you so much for watching and for being with us. And like Jennifer said, let's continue staying home and keeping safe, and also just using this time to bond with our families and, do all those things that we haven't gotten to do. So today I'll be talking about the power of routine in dealing with crisis. I'll go through what is a routine, why is it important, what are some of the things that we need to consider when starting a routine, and then we'll just go through a short exercise of creating a routine together. And then, we will end the session. So I hope it will be helpful to you. So basically, at this time, there's a lot that's going on in our bodies, in our minds, that, basically has, and in our environment that has thrown off our daily routine, So if you used to wake up and go to work and then come back home, and it's just not like that anymore. Children used to go to school, and now they don't go to school anymore. So of course, all of these the things that have happened have thrown off our routines, and we are not really quite able to go on as normal as we used to, but we still need to get things done, right? And so I know a lot of people have told me that they're struggling with boredom, for example. They don't know what to do with their time. They don't know how to keep themselves busy. They don't know how to keep their children busy. And sometimes when you're bored, or you're bored and you're stressed up, you find that you end up engaging in behaviors that are, not helpful to you. Like a lot of children right now are getting into pornography, they're getting into substance use, they're getting into some mischief, misbehavior, just doing things that they would normally not do, but because there's time and they're bored and there's this crisis that's going on and everyone seems tense. These are some of the things that, people are engaging in. So of course, last week, the thing about routine came up because, I kept saying it, in my past webinars, I've kept saying, have a routine. And then they were like, okay, now we need to actually debunk this thing that's called a routine and see why is it important, and, what are some of the barriers and how can we actually do it? And so, of course, a routine is something that you do on a regular basis. Okay, something that you do on a regular basis and that follows a particular pattern. And so I want us to think back at, when you're in primary school, when you're in high school, you came up with something we called a timetable, right? And so a timetable, you would put all the way from the time you woke up to the time you slept, what you would do. And every single hour of that day, especially if you're in high school, in a boarding school, was accounted for. There was no time you would just be there was no time you would just be there and not sure of what you're doing. So basically, that's what our routine is. So the fact is, and what I want us to get into this discussion with, is that you are already doing some kind of routine. You already have something going on for you. And so that is what we're hopefully later going to work on, to build upon that and make it better, see where we're struggling a bit, and see what tips can help us to deal with the struggles that we're having. So I want us to also kind of get rid of this idea that a routine is boring, that a routine is limiting, like it will limit us our freedom. Maybe you feel like, I'm a free spirit, I don't want to be told what to do. Or like, this is a time for us to be like free and do whatever, we want to do. And that has consequences, especially on your mental health, because then you end up feeling like you're not being productive. You don't do the important things that you need to do, the basic self-care things that you need to get done. So let's get into why is routine important. So I want us to think of routine, the importance of routine as, something like when you miss your favorite food, for example, if you stay for the longest time without eating this food that you really, really love, think about that. You stayed a whole month or even a whole year. And what happens when you finally get to eat that food? What are the feelings that come together with that when you see, oh my goodness, there is my favorite food. It can be rice, it can be ugali, it can be, whatever you consider your favorite food. And you finally get to eat it. And what is that feeling that you have after that? You feel relieved, you feel happy, you feel comfort. It's familiar, And so those are some of the feelings that come with having a routine. Human behavior, human beings, we are set up in a way that we need to have some kind of familiarity, some kind of rhythm, or some kind of sequence to our lives. And so basically, that's one of the things that makes routine very, very important. And especially in times like this, in times of sudden change and in times of crisis like we have right now with the coronavirus, routine is one of the things that brings comfort. And so I want us to have that in the back of our mind as we're thinking of how we're gonna come up with our routines. And of course, none of us knows when schools will open. None of us knows when or whether things will go back to normal. And so having routine also helps us feel like we have a sense of control. Because a lot of times in times like this, there's so many things out of your control. You can't just up and leave and fly to another country. Some of us can't even go to the next county, because we are on lockdown. And so you find that we have these feelings that we're out of control. There's so many things we cannot control. So routine is one of those things that helps you feel like you're back in control of your life, which is very, very, very important. And of course, I talked about the daily rhythm, the thing about when we are in crisis, like the one we are in right now, our rhythm, like our sleep-wake cycle, for example, our body temperature, the hormones in our bodies, all of those are thrown off. And so our routine puts that back into perspective. So let me give an example. I'm sure you've noticed, especially the first few days, it's been a few weeks now. So maybe the first few days you had trouble sleeping, you were not eating meals regularly. So that means that your rhythm, your natural rhythm, which we call the circadian rhythm, has been thrown off. And so you find that when you have a routine, that helps you put back your natural rhythm back into play, which helps with your mental health, which helps with your mood. Because, for example, if your child is not sleeping, or if you're not sleeping, you're a lot more irritable, you're less productive, and the list goes on and on and on. And so another thing that's really, really important about having a routine is that it frees up your mind. So for example, a lot of us, especially if you are a parent, you have a lot of things in your mind. You know, you're constantly thinking of, okay, yeah, so the children have to do this, and then they have to do that, and then I have to do this for my relative, and then I have to do this for work, and then I have to do this for myself, and then I have to do this for my sister. So there's so many things always going on in our minds on a daily basis. And so in order to free up our minds so that we can be more creative and more productive and more at peace and less distressed, it's good to have a routine. Why? Because a routine just helps us to automate behavior. And that's actually the whole point of one of like the key whole points of having a routine, you know, where once you do a behavior over and over and over, then it becomes part of you. It becomes a habit. So you don't have to think about it, you know? So basically for everyone, parents, single people alike, this kind of helps you to just kind of automate your behavior and not so have to think so much about what you're gonna do. And in the case of children, it helps them to actually have less behavior problem because they know, okay, when I wake up, I'm going to eat breakfast, and then after breakfast I will brush my teeth, because again, boredom and idleness brings up a whole host of other behavior problems, because people are always going to be trying to fill up the time or fill up the boredom, and unfortunately it's not usually with positive things, you know. So we have how creating a routine can also help you come up with balance or achieve balance in your life. And so what does that mean? You know, like I said, again, we've been kind of thrown off of balance because of the crisis. And like I mentioned before, because of boredom or because of that lack of balance, and our normal routines have been thrown off. Maybe you have a lot of work, but you're not getting any of that work accomplished, you know. So routine helps you to have these good habits like self-care, because you can put it in your schedule, and kick out these bad habits, you know. For example, like binge watching TV the whole day, or being on social media for a whole day, or abusing substances, or getting into addictive behaviors. You know, like I said earlier, a lot of young people, unfortunately, are getting into pornography or abusing drugs and things like that. So these are some of the things that people get into when they're bored and they don't have structure or something to do with their time. And of course, a routine just helps you to be able to accomplish things. Because once you put it down, and again, this is something about human nature, once you put something down on paper, the more you're able to do them and the easier it gets to do, and eventually becomes a habit. So I want to go into some principles of like setting up a routine or things to keep in mind. But I don't know if, Jennifer, you have any questions about what a routine is or why it is important.
Barnice, you're talking about routine. For
Yes.
me, and you've mentioned issues like when you're in a high school, routines were normal, and
Yes.
timetables. So is I having a timetable, is that a routine? Like for
Okay.
me,
Yes.
the
That's a
timetable
very
a
good
routine.
question. That's a very good question. So a timetable is a tool to help you get into routine. So there are many tools that you can use. You can use a timetable. Some people do like a to-do list. Some people are already in such a highly structured environment, for example, like a school setting, like for example, your children, they don't need a timetable and they don't need to be told get into a routine because they're already in one, you know. So structured settings are also another tool to provide us. So yes, a timetable is a tool, but I was just trying to show us that these are things that we already have. It's just about looking at it differently, you know. Yeah. So I think I'm going to go into some of the things that we need to think about when coming up with a routine. Like I said, a routine is not something that's complicated, and it's not something that is complex. It's actually a very, very simple thing, and you build upon it very, very slowly. So I want us to think about having a routine like learning how to ride a bicycle, right? So whether you're a child or an adult, the process is the same, okay? So when you want to learn how to ride a bicycle, you have to have a bicycle. So get a bicycle and a helmet. And after that, you need to learn how to balance, because of course, if you have never done it before, you don't know how to balance. So you get on the bike and you sit on it, and then you move with it, but with your feet touching the ground. And then you keep practicing that and practicing that. And if you fall, you still get up and try again and keep practicing. And then once you learn how to balance, then after that, you can now get on the pedals, right? And you pedal. Short distances first you go 1 meter, slowly you stop because you feel like you're gonna fall, and then you go another 2 meters, then you go another 3 meters, all right, with the pedal. And so after you keep practicing with the pedals, moving, cycling, then you can go for as long distances as you wish to go. But when you first learn how to ride a bicycle, you never think of, I wonder how long it will take. Because really your goal is, I want to learn how to ride a bike, and it will take as long as it will take, and I will keep practicing, right? So these are some of the ways, this is how I want us to think about coming up with a routine, that you have to have a goal in mind, you need to have the right tools, you need to break down your goals into small tasks, and then practice through trial and error, and just be gracious with yourself. These things, it takes a long time for human behavior to kind of form and become a habit. Yeah. So before beginning any routine, it's good to set a goal. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. They're like, oh, I want to have a routine, but then there are no goals, right? So what are you working towards? So of course, when you're setting goals, you need to set SMART goals. And some of these SMART goals are, you think about what's important to you, right? So if what is important to you is for your children to do an activity independently, by that I mean you're not supervising them, you're not helping them, then you can have that as one of the goals. All right. Maybe a goal for you is for you to read more. So you're already reading, but you want to increase your reading. Maybe another goal can be exercise. So when you're thinking about these goals, think of the goals in terms of 3 categories. The first one is career. And of course, for children, this would be school, because school is building into a type of career, right? So career, relationships, and then the third one is self-care. So when you think of a schedule or a routine, your routine needs to have those 3 things. It is to have something that's building into school and academics or career, relationships, friendships, okay? So for married people, this would be working on your marriage relationships. For a parent, this would be bonding more with your child or helping your child be more responsible. That's a good goal to have in terms of relationship. And self-care, which is something we've also mentioned over and over again. So there's self-care for children. So self-care for a child would look something like being able to brush their teeth on their own. So it's up to you to teach them the steps. You go up, you go sideways, you go down, you go up again, you repeat the cycle, you brush your tongue, you spit out, things like that. So, and then of course, there's also self-care for the adult, of where they're able to take, to exercise or to meditate or to drink more water. So the list goes on and on and on. So I'd like to just mention briefly categories of behavior, because I think a lot of times also when we are using a schedule as a tool to help us have a routine, we don't think through it comprehensively. So let me explain. So for example, you can have a behavior you want to increase. Okay, so like I said, you are already reading, but you want to read more. Or your children are already reading, but maybe they only read for 10 minutes a day. So you want to increase that reading time from 10 minutes to maybe an hour or 2 hours a day. So that's a behavior you would like to increase. A behavior you would like to decrease, for example, is crying. Crying, there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes, a lot of times, children will cry for many reasons. So you find that a child will cry for attention, a child will cry for when they're in pain, or a child will cry when they're sad. Okay, so we want to decrease the behavior of crying because of attention. They're trying to get attention, so they will cry, right? So that's a behavior to decrease. You do not want that. Okay, you only want them to cry when they're actually in pain, or when they're sad, when they're expressing their feelings. A behavior you would like to absolutely stop is something like fighting. Okay, siblings fight a lot. Yeah, as adults, we fight a lot verbally or even physically sometimes. So that's a behavior you would like to stop, some kind of aggression. So when you think of behaviors like that, it really helps you think through, okay, so when I set my schedule, we're going to put in a slot for, okay, reading time, and we're going to increase reading time by 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And I'd like to set a time there of where, when I see my child is crying and they're crying because they're trying to get attention, I will ignore that behavior because I want that behavior to decrease. All right, so all these things kind of go into creating a routine. And like I've mentioned before, when I first started, that one of the most effective tools of helping you to come up with a routine is a schedule. All right, so you can use a schedule, you can use a to-do list, but whatever you do, make sure it's written down. Because if it's not written down, then it doesn't happen. That's just something that we have in terms of with human behavior. So when you write it down, it's visible to you. Put it in a place where you can see it. Put it in a place where your children can see it or your spouse can see it. So you have to keep in mind that we're writing it down because we need to measure it. Because what is not measured, or what you cannot look back and say, oh, did I do this or did I do that? That's what I mean by measuring. Then it doesn't get done at all. So, of course, if you're in a family setting, it's very important to include the children. Children as young as 2 years old, 3 years old can be involved in coming up with your schedule or your routine. Involve your friend if you're single. Involve your spouse if you're married, because this is a teamwork of where you cannot do it by yourself because you need accountability. Because it's very easy to just sit down and say, oh, I want to start a new routine. And you come up with this whole elaborate, nice looking schedule, and then you never do it, and nobody's going to ask you. So you involve others so that we can at least get some form of accountability. As a parent, if you involve your children, they will remind you. They'll be like, Mommy, we were supposed to do this and this, or Daddy, we were supposed to do this and this at this time, and so it's helpful for that accountability. Or you will remind them that, remember, we agreed that at 1 o'clock, it's time for lunch. That means everybody stops playing, we all come in and we have lunch together, for example. So it takes teamwork. And something else that you need to keep in mind as you put together a routine is that that you need to kind of structure it around the things you do every day. Okay. And so what are these things? The things that you must do every day is wake up. At some point, you're going to wake up. At some point, you're going to eat. At some point, you're going to need to sleep, so that those are 3 basic things that we all have to do. So you structure your routine or your schedule around those. When you wake up, when you're eating, and when you're sleeping. All right. And then, of course, you have to practice patience. Just keep it at the back of your mind, because the next step we're going to do is actually start creating this routine, or come up with like some kind of example of how a routine can look like through use of a schedule. Make sure that you're consistent. So whatever you do, it's just consistent. So if you say, for example, every day we're going to have lunch at 1, it needs to be like that every single day. And that's what consistency means. Flexibility also is important, because if you, for example, don't, someone falls sick, or you are late, or something, maybe that day you might not be able to have lunch at 1, but you'll have lunch at 2. That's okay. The next day you'll go back and have lunch at 1 again, you know? And so that's what it means to be flexible. So when we're creating a routine, you have to remember that you have 168 hours in a week. And that sounds like a lot of hours. So for some people, it's like, oh my goodness, those are way too many hours. And for some are like, okay, those are too few hours, we need more. But either way, you always have to keep in mind that the concept of time, that you have time to do whatever you think or you feel you need to do. And so I want us to, if you have a pen, if you have a paper, please take it out now, because I want us to kind of draft something that will help us with creating a routine. But before I go further, I don't know, Jennifer, if you have any questions so far about some of the things we need to keep in mind as we create a routine.
Thank you so much. That is very, very elaborated. So for me, the question is, as you're scheduling, are we able to think about maybe parents who have special needs children, or parents who don't have the 8 to 5? They have to run there, they have to work, or they have to, they don't have, they're self-employed. So they'd want to stick to their routine and probably follow up with their children, but they are not able to because of their circumstances. So are we able to talk about that?
Okay. So you've mentioned parents with special needs children. You've mentioned parents who are self-employed, and so they're not able to stick to a schedule or something like that. Yeah. Yeah, so I think I did speak a little bit, like in another webinar, I did speak a little bit about parents with special needs children. The same principles apply. It's just that you have to be a bit more attentive and a little bit more experimental. By experimental, I mean you do a lot more trial and error. All right. So as I'm going through some of the ways that we can use to create a routine, these apply. They apply for everybody. Whether you have a child with special needs, whether you are a child, whether you are a teenager or a young person, whether you're an adult, they all kind of apply across all of that. And the thing about coming up with a schedule is you come up with a schedule according to what fits your life, okay? Not according to what you saw someone doing and thought it's really nice. So for the parent who's self-employed and has to juggle between work and caregiving and monitoring the kids and doing all this stuff, you just have to kind of work around that, and find a way to balance it all. And I think that's one of the key benefits of a routine, is to kind of trying to balance all these things when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're feeling like this is too much, like I cannot be able to do it. So I'll just go to, I'd requested us to take out our pens and papers, and for some of us it's your phone or your laptop, whatever applies. And this is for us to create what I'm calling a baseline. All right. So a baseline is, what do I do every day and how much time does it take? All right, so pick a day in a week. Could have been yesterday, but just for the sake or purpose of the exercise, pick a weekday of where, and from morning, think from morning, what do you do in the morning? What's the first thing you do? And then after that, what do you do? What do you do in the afternoon? And then what do you do in the evening? And if you're in a family situation, think through, what do your children do? What does your spouse do? And so the purpose of coming up with this baseline is to help us know, what am I doing and how much time am I spending on each of the things I'm doing. So it's very, very helpful before coming up with any schedule, especially when we are in a situation like we are in, where all of us, or at least most of us, are home, and it can be very unstructured. So it's good to know where your time is going and what you're doing with your day. And then you remember me talking about goals, coming up with goals. All right. So think through what your priority for this week is. So by priority, I mean, what is most important to you? Okay. People have different things that are important to them. Yeah. So for some, it would be, I just need to be able to get some work done this week because I'm at home and there's so many interruptions or so many disruptions. Maybe it's children disrupting you, maybe it's a friend disrupting you, maybe it's your phone. I think phones are one of the biggest distractors, a bit more than people actually, because you keep getting notifications and all these things going on. So think through, what is my priority this week? All right. And so your priority this week could be something as simple as, okay, I just want to come up with a simple schedule where we just do the basic bare minimum things. What does that mean? It means that we just wake up at the same time every day. Right? So one of the things that you have to keep in mind to set yourself up for failure, not for failure, for success, when you are coming up with a routine, is starting small. Okay? So you can just say, I just want to come up with a schedule where I wake up every day, I eat the same time every day, and I sleep the same time. Very simple. 3 things, only 3 things you need to change. And then after that, we can build on it. But that's the starting point. All right. So, and then there's also something I'd like to show us that will help with creating a routine, which is a certain behavior model. Just give me a minute here. Oh, okay. All right. So there's this behavior. What causes behavior change? Because coming up with a routine involves a change in behavior. Remember, a routine are a series or a pattern of activities that we do on a regular basis. So there's this professor from Stanford University who's come up with a model. And he says that there are 3 things that will help you to change your behavior. And that's motivation. You have to be motivated to do it. Okay, so as a parent, you are motivated to come up with a routine because it helps your life become so much easier. And also it helps your children to become more responsible, to do what they're supposed to do. And it reduces also behavior that you do not want to see, So motivation, you have to be very well motivated. You can also be socially motivated. Maybe you want to exercise because you want to feel more healthy or be more healthy or lose weight. All right. So those are some determinants. You also have to be able to do it. So when you're setting a schedule or when you're setting a routine, for example, if you have your child if you set up a time slot of your child doing something for 30 minutes and they only have the ability to concentrate for 10 minutes, then that's not helpful, because that means that they cannot do that activity independently. They will keep interrupting you, etc. So motivation, ability, and trigger. So trigger is these when you see something, it can trigger you. It can be something you see, it can be something you smell, anything to do with your senses. Taste, touch, all those are triggers. Okay, so of course we are motivated by a lot of things which are there: time, money, effort, our own normal cycle, like I talked about, the circadian rhythm, And of course, there's also routine. Routine in itself is also a motivator. You know, when you're used to doing something, when something is familiar to you, all right? So basically, I just wanted to share with us that before we go into the actual creating of the schedule, because I think that it's important for us to understand what motivates you, because that's what's going to keep you going and going and going. All right. And then another thing that we need to keep in mind is activities. So I've heard, you know, a lot of parents talking about the thing about, you know, my children are bored, you know, what do I do with them? They're constantly coming to me, asking me, you know, 10 times, you know, what will I do? What will I do? What will I do? And I feel like, Jennifer, this has also come up a little bit in our discussions before of what are those activities that parents can do with their children with using things around the house. Yeah. So when you're coming up with a routine, when you're coming up with a schedule, you have to think of activities. And this is a fun way to actually brainstorm with your children. It's a fun way to brainstorm with your friend, or if you're on your own, you can also do it on your own as well. And so one of the things that I just trying to share the screen here again. Okay, so one of the things that is very important to do, and I put here independent activities, and independent activities basically means the activities children can do on their own without needing you to assist them or prompt them in any way. So the things you can do around the house, in the kitchen, you can make music using spoons, pot, pans, you know, things that are safe, things that are not going to break, like glass. You can do an obstacle course in the house, in the living room or outdoor, for example. And you can take a magnifying glass. This is a very fun activity, actually, that I do a lot with children. You take a magnifying glass and you just go around. It can be in the house, it can be outdoor. You look through things, you know, using a magnifying glass. You can make dance videos. They can dance to music, or they can make their own fun videos. A lot of children these days are very, very savvy with tech, you know, so these are things that they can already do on their own. I also put that they can help arrange they can help arrange socks. And basically, this is the saying, this is where the chores now begin to come in. And I've also have a list of what adults can do, some activities adults can do, which is from cooking to playing games to, you know, using the crossword puzzle in the newspaper. These are leisure activities, of course, over and above. If you're working, of course, this is something that you would be doing in your free time. So basically, these are just some ideas of activities that we can include in our routine. So I want us to just take a moment right now and think through, what do I want to include in my schedule? You know, there are those, you know, we've already thought about what your priority is. Now think through, okay, what do I want to do during free time? And we can use some of those activities that I have suggested. And then, of course, we have what we call, let me just give also some ideas of chores. I think it's important because a lot of times we do for children what they can do for themselves, okay? And because we have house helps, at least most of us have house helps, you find that the house help is also doing for the child what the child can do for themselves. And so for me, I'm always very much against that. As a developmentalist, I'm like, you know, let the child do what they can do for themselves. But I think sometimes parents and caregivers also get stuck to feel that, you know, what are these things? What are these things that my child can do that are age appropriate, right? So I'll just very, very briefly go through some of these ideas. And so if they are toddlers, 2 and 3 years old, they are still learning, but they can brush their teeth because they can hold a toothbrush and go through their teeth. you know. They can clean up after themselves. Basically, if they were playing and their toys are everywhere, they can pick up those toys and put them back in a basket. All right. Then we have ages 4 to 5 of where they can take a bath or a shower. Some still need assistance, but they do have the motor skills, the fine motor skills to actually take a bath and a shower on their own if they're taught how to do it properly. You know, they can clean their own shoes. You know, they can help you clean the windows if your windows are dirty. You know, and these are some things that we never really think about, but really think about how, if you're an adult, think about how you grew up, and the activities and responsibilities that you did, especially if you didn't have a house help. So age 6 and 7, you find that they're able to brush their own hair, they can put their own clothes away, they're able to do a lot more. And of course, age 10, 8 to 10, they can do most of the cleaning in your house, in their own rooms, in the house. They can organize their own room, and so much more. You know, so these are just some ideas of that when you come up with your schedule, which will help you develop a routine, what chores and what activities can you do to help these children become more responsible, but also to keep them busy. I don't like using the word keep them busy because we've used it too much with children, where you're like, okay, just give them a phone or give them the tablet to keep them busy. And it's like, no, they can use the tablet to look at something educational, to play a fun learning game. You know, they can use their free time to create, you know, to come up with an art project of where, I don't know, when I was in primary school, which was quite a while ago, we used to use like beans and sticks and leaves and stones and dirt to make a collage. You know, do kids nowadays get those opportunities? I mean, like, you really just have to go back to the basics when you're thinking about coming up with activities for children to do, and also for yourself to do. You know, you just have to be very creative. So let me just go into some of the actual routine itself and how we can do it. And so when you're coming up with a routine, you divide your schedule into chunks. So you have the morning chunk, you have the afternoon chunk, and you have the evening chunk. And so, so of course, morning ends at, you know, 11:59, and this helps you to think, just helps you to think through. Like I said, you can create start simple. You know, you don't want something complicated. All right. And of course, I realize my examples are very much geared towards parents with young children, but it's also because parents with young children struggle more to come up with activities and come up with ideas. And they're the ones who actually need that quite structure more than those with older children. Because if you're talking to like a 12-year-old, they can come up with their own schedule and they can come up with their own routine. Actually, that's something that you can give them and tell them to do. It's like, okay, during this holiday, I remember when I was growing up, that's one of the things that my parents did for me. They told me, you know, you have this free time and this holiday from school, come up with your own schedule and then bring it to me and we'll discuss it. So that's something you can do with like teenagers and older children. And of course, adults, this is something that adults can do on their own. So I want us to now look at a sample schedule, okay? And this sample schedule is based on a parent or a parent with a child, with a 6-year-old child. And this is just to help us think through how we could possibly come up with a schedule that will help us develop our routine. Okay, so, all right, so this is, let's see here. So this is something that I want us to, like, as I'm going through this, I also want you to kind of write on a parallel side your own, just kind of something just sketchy, just to draft, something to draft up. So I put here, this schedule is based on the goal of you want to be able to work, and you also want your child to do some activities on their own. And also you want to be able to bond with your child. So you wake up at 6 a.m. Sometimes your child will also be awake with you at that time, because that's what they were used to, waking up when they went to school. They were used to waking up early. Wake up, get showered, and get dressed. And so why is that important? It's very important for you to do that because it gets you energized. It tells your body that you need to start the day, because right now, if you don't have to go into work or you don't have to go into school, then you just tell yourself, I can just, stay in my pajamas a little bit, or I don't have to shower, or I don't have to brush my teeth. And so those things are actually what makes your day to have less energy and make you to be less productive. So of course, you can do an activity. A lot of people like to have some ritual in the morning, like prayer or journaling or meditation or exercise. There are a lot of things people do. Prepare breakfast, wake the children up. You can eat breakfast together. Assist the child to brush their teeth, wash their face. They can pick out their own clothes and basically dress themselves. Because remember, they're 6 years old, so they need to be able to actually do all these things by that age. But you can assist them if needed. Of course, then we get to the part of where you give yourself a time slot of where you're able to check your emails or make phone calls. This is if you're working from home. And of course, this is actually designed for someone who's working from home. And then I've also put here some resources that enable online learning. So I know right now we're not in the school term, like we are technically on holiday, although we've been on holiday for a while, but like learning activities don't have to stop when children close school or when children stop going to school. They keep going because you have to keep stimulating their brain. And learning is really like a lifelong process, for children and adults. We all keep learning. So there are some online platforms there that can be used: Kitabu, Elimu, Elimu, and Longhorn e-learning. And there's so many other more on the internet that you can use that are safe and fun for children to learn from. And of course, then you go to where you need to have a conference meeting for your work, but then you also schedule something fun for your child to do. And so this is only showing for one morning, but you see how it can be broken down to, all right? And so I know what the question a lot of us are asking, and I know Jennifer, you're also asking this question, is how do we get our children motivated to do this? I don't know if that's a struggle that a lot of us have, because it's one thing to think through the routine, to think through what needs to go into the schedule, but then how do you motivate children to go through with it? And so there's what we call the rewards or reinforcers that kind of help us to keep our kids motivated. So we do this even for adults, for all humans. It's really the same thing. So of course you can help children you can think of it, oops, just hold on, I'm having some difficulties there. Let me go back. Okay, so in order to get your children motivated, remember what I showed us before, that in order for us to change behavior, which is to do something different that we're not used to doing, you have to be motivated. And so we motivate ourselves and we motivate others through rewards. So they're material rewards, and these material rewards are things like toys, clothes, and sweets. But usually before we go to that, I always say, start with something simple like praise. So for example, in my schedule, I showed us that we wanted our child to sit down for an hour and go on an online learning platform like Kitabu. And they need to do this on their own. They don't need the support of their parents, right? And of course, you already know when you're putting this in your schedule, you already know that your child can do this, that they can get on a tablet or get on a laptop and log themselves in, or you already have logged them in, and that they can navigate, or they have lessons that they can do, right? So the reward comes after the desired behavior. Okay, so if your child is able to do that, they're able to learn for 1 hour without too many breaks. Let me put it that way, without too many breaks in between, and you find that your goal has been met, then you can give them a hug, you can give them a praise, and then or you can use a token reinforcer, which is they get points. So that day they'll get 5 points because they were really able to sit down and do this thing. And so this will keep them reinforced and wanting to keep doing the same behavior over and over and over. I try to keep away from big reinforcers like clothes and toys because sorry, am I back on, or am I still sharing the screen? Okay, I think I'm back on. I try to keep away from the big things like I'll get you a bike, because you want them to work up towards that. For example, after they've done many small things. So they've been reading well, they've been playing quite well, and the list of behaviors. So it's the same for yourself, like if you're trying to motivate yourself as a parent to do something, you say that maybe after I do 2 hours of work, then I can take a break and have, my favorite tea, or I can get to chat with my friend for 10 minutes. So those are some kind of rewards that we need to put in for ourselves, or put in our routine to motivate ourselves to make this routine stick, because that's the whole idea, is to make the routine stick and to make it a habit. So I've really talked about a lot of things, and I hope that you have at least picked up something from the discussion today. Spoken about, what our routine is, why our routine is important, some of the things that we need to keep in mind while coming up with our routine, and also just going through creating a routine. And I hope that you've also come up with your own routine today. So Jennifer, over to you.
Thank you so much. But I'm looking at that 6 o'clock and I'm thinking, how many people nowadays wake up at 6? How many people? If you wake up at 6, please do let us know on Facebook, because you're the ones who are developing this country. The rest of us, we don't hit 6 o'clock. So, but anyway, but I'm thinking that you can be able to adjust towards the time you wake up.
You adjust it to fit your life. Yeah.
To fit your life. But thank you so much. And so and I wish we'd have gone to, because the gap right now we have is the adolescent. Right yes. Now they have so much energy and nothing to do with it. Probably they have watched all the Netflixes that are available. They have watched all YouTube videos.
Yeah.
They are so bored. I think what we need to do is for me, I find younger children are easy, because you can give them a paper and pencil and tell them draw, and they'll go ahead and draw.
Wait until your kids grow up and they become adolescents.
Yes, now the adolescent is what, like, today is my daughter's birthday, and I know, and I'm thinking, oh my God, you're getting towards that age where I will not be able to tell her what to do. So I don't know if do we have time? We have like 4 minutes to go.
Yes.
So I don't know, probably for next week, for the adolescent, with all the with the hormones running through their systems, and they're so, how can adolescent parents with adolescent children stay sane? because that's it. Because there's banging of doors, there's clicking of tongues, there's beating, there's shouting,
Yeah.
the whole shebang. So how can we in this season? Because the routine, yes, is for the younger ones. What about the older ones? There are those ones who are planning to sit for the exams. It's a whole mix of things. How can we make them more engaged into the family life, and as much as we are all being put in the same, how can we make them more motivated and they don't feel, because I was reading reports from, I think it's in the UK or the US, where there's been a spike of suicide among the adolescents, and because they're feeling they're worthless, corona has come, has messed up their lives. They do not know what to do. They cannot talk to their friends. They can't go to parties. They can't go hang out with their friends. What can they do? Because I'm sure there's a parent asking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with my adolescent children? They have phones, and you want to limit the kind of content they're accessing. So I think that we cover that for next week. How can we plan for the adolescent children? Thank you so much, Barnice. Let me tell you, I'm getting calls telling what you guys are doing amazing. There's someone who has in their family WhatsApp group. After every episode, they post it in their WhatsApp group for their parents, for the whole of their family to watch, which is a good thing. Thank you for, who I'm talking about. You called me in the morning to tell me, to ask me if Barnice is coming on again. So thank you so much, and please keep your questions on the group, on the Facebook. We have moved from the to the page because you want to make it as a series. In the profile, we are not able to make it as a series, so that when you click, you can be able to see all the episode or talk to a psychologist. So we have moved to the page so that you can be able to serialize it, and you guys can be able to binge watch all the programs by Barnice. But thank you so much, Barnice. God bless you, and see you next week as we delve more on handling teenagers.
Right.
And how can we make them more engaged. And the rest of you, thank you. We are looking for a doctor. I found one. I'm still yet to confirm with her if she's available tomorrow. But if not tomorrow, see you on Thursday with Evelyn as we talk digital education. God bless you, and bye. See ya. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you so
Bye bye,
much.
Barnice. Thank you.
Yeah.